Well, hello, hello, hello. Good evening, good evening, good evening. Welcome to the Real Talk Show with Dr. India White. I am here, your talk show host. I'm super excited. I'm so happy to be among you guys. So, we are going to talk today about dealing with anger and guilt in a time like this in our society. I think many of you can kind of just understand and relate to what's been happening in the news, what's been happening around society. I'm not going to really dive into too much detail. I don't even have to say three words and you guys would get it. And so I want to talk to you guys because I think all of us are trying to cope with what has been going on in society, right? And what's happening, however, is we need solutions as to how we can effectively deal with guilt, with anger, and other emotions that have been coming our way. People have been in hot water since different things have happened, since the pandemic and since our civil unrest, which we are unfortunately all kind of going through together. All of us are experiencing these historical moments together. And so it's imperative that we figure out how we can effectively do this so that we can continue being useful citizens and continue to produce good, positive energy in society. So, with that said, I'm going to talk to you guys first about dealing with guilt. Now, I come in here to talk about guilt because I think guilt is definitely one of the emotions that some of us are feeling because we kind of just feel like we've been thrust into a lot of different things. But then not just that, there's also different things that we're dealing with in our own lives, right? With guilt, we might have made a decision that wasn't necessarily the best decision. We could have said something that was not necessarily the best thing to say. So we've got all these different things that are kind of working against us, right? So how do we effectively deal with guilt? So I wanted to share with you guys some information that I was able to take from a website called mindpathcare.com. Okay, mindpathcare.com. So I'm going to show that real quick. Mindpathcare.com. And what mindpathcare.com tells us to do, first off, we've got to know what is guilt exactly. What is the definition? So, first off, the definition of guilt, guys, is when you have a feeling of like committing a specific or implied offense, maybe even a crime. You've done something that you know is wrong. And so you start, feeling like you have a sense of blame on you. It can lead into stress. It can lead into anxiety. It can also build into frustration and humiliation. So we've got all these different things working. And so some people would recommend going to a therapist, right? However, what if you necessarily don't have a therapist? Then what do you do? So I want to talk to you guys about what we can do just to kind of deal with guilt in a healthy manner without doing anything that we would regret later on. So when I looked at this website, it talked about a lot of different things that we could do. First things first, it said, if you're trying to deal with guilt, you got to just be realistic about your situation. You have to forgive yourself. Okay. I don't know what offense you might have done or someone that you know might have committed, but they've got to forgive themselves. And then afterwards, they've got to be able to say they're sorry. Okay. Those are some powerful words. And I can tell you right now, I have not heard a lot of I'm sorry just in general. Right. And sometimes it's like, the more you continue to live and do business transactions with people, you tend to not hear I'm sorry a lot, right? So it just kind of seems like those words that people, for some reason, they just don't want to say it at times. And I don't know why, because I know I'm sorry is a very powerful words that you can say. And so with that said, these are different things that you can do when you're dealing with guilt. And you can also just kind of think of the present situation and how can you make amends and how can you make things right with the people that you unfortunately caused some type of offense to. And I know some of you guys are like, okay, why are we talking about guilt? Because I think that some of us have been having some pretty intense conversations. We might have said something that, you can't take your words back, right? I mean, so how do you make things right? Well, sometimes you just got to walk in humility, humble yourself, and say, goodness, I got to make things right with that other person, right? So when I was looking at some different references for us, so I've got mindpathcare.com. That's a really great website. They also talks about when you're dealing with guilt, um, make sure that you have a positive affirmation, because there's different types of guilt that you'll deal with. Okay. And so what happens is you've got a healthy guilt where it's like you knew you were wrong and you just got to make things right. Humble yourself, say you're sorry, make things right. And then there's this unhealthy guilt where it's like coming from perfectionism. And I don't know if you guys have ever been tied to somebody that is a perfectionist. I have been in relationships with perfectionists as far as like, friends, family, things like that. And, even, sometimes, as I've climbed up the ranks, of course, we've all had perfectionists. The thing about being with someone that's a perfectionist, or working with a perfectionist, or going, fellowshipping with someone that's a perfectionist, is it seems like no matter what you do, no matter how many times you say you're sorry, it's just not good enough, right? And so I kind of want to be that voice of confidence and support to let you know that, for one, none of us is perfect, right? And two, you do not have to take any unhealthy guilt to where you feel like, I can never make things right for what I said or what I did. Like, you have to just be able to own the moment that you did, experience. And then afterwards, you've got to just say, I'm owning the moment, and now I'm taking full responsibility as an adult to make sure that I no longer repeat those actions, or that I can somehow protect other people, in a better fashion than before. So with that said, these are things that we really want to make sure that we are, taking care of when we're dealing with guilt. So I also want to come here to you guys and talk to you a little bit too about just kind of like a verse that I go to whenever I deal with guilt. My life has not been easy pickings at all. I can tell you, I've had some ups and downs, and so yes, I've made some wrong choices, and so I've even beat myself up from some life choices that I've made, and just kind of been like, "Gosh, why did I do that?" And you just beat yourself up. And there's just like this never ending condemnation that you experience because you could have done better, or that you disappointed someone, right? And so it's like you're dealing with all of these different emotions, and you have to constantly kind of bounce back and say, how can I make things right? And so, with that said, I go to a lot of different resources. For one, I make sure that I'm mentally healthy. I will talk to somebody. I am not slow to pick up a phone and call someone in my support group and figure it out, right? I love just talking it out. Sometimes it's the best therapy that we can give ourselves, is to find someone that we can trust enough to just really kind of blow off some steam. Now, we have to be careful in that too, because you don't want to do damage to that person that's listening, right? It's like you kind of want to just kind of have a healthy balance as you are trying to deal with something like guilt. I also, when I'm dealing with guilt, there's a verse that I go to, and it says, there is no condemnation to them who are in Christ Jesus. And I use that as a believer, because I need something that's, going to just kind of give me a sense of hope or encouragement. But, if you don't even use the scripture like that, there's other things, like there's therapy sessions, there's, just taking a walk, going, to a trip to the beach, or hanging out with those that love you, that support you, or start kind of changing. If it was a certain deed that you did, what can you do different? What can you partake in? What can you donate to? What can you, kind of do deed wise, you know what I mean, to make up for what was done, But one thing I want to assure you guys, that if you're dealing with guilt, this is not, the end of the rope for you. There is hope, you know what I mean? And so if you feel like, I'm dealing with guilt, I need some resources. I want you to check out www.mindpathcare.com. And if you guys have any other resources and you're like, oh, India, I know of a certain resource, go ahead and chime it down in the Facebook chat. Let us know, and I'll be able to shout that out. Okay. So that's the first thing I wanted to talk about with you guys today was guilt. And, just overall, the one thing we can all do to just kind of avoid feeling guilty is just to continue to make right choices and to lead with our heart. And I don't mean to lead foolishly with your heart, but I mean lead in a way where you're constantly thinking about the consequences of your actions and the decisions that you're making or the things that you're saying. Um, I try to walk softly with people. Do I mess up? Of course, right? But for the most part, I try to walk softly with people and I try to consider their heart before I say something, even if my stance is right. So, for example, I was on Facebook and I saw a post. This happened actually twice this week. Very stirring type of post that, they were trying to get a response from you, you know what I mean? And usually the response is not going to be a good response. Sometimes people will tweet just the right thing or post just the right thing on Facebook, and it will get your blood like just boiling to where you're like, I can't believe they said that or whatever, or and so what happens is you feel tempted to give into that, right? And I'm kind of going into guilt or into anger a little bit, but we'll get there. So you feel tempted to post into some of these things, especially all the stuff dealing with civil unrest and pandemic issues. Like we're all kind of on edge and we're all sensitive, trying to figure out what our stance is and what we're going to do. How can we contribute to kind of unify our nation, things like that. But anyway, let's get back to this conversation. So I saw two posts and I was like, OMG, I cannot believe they said that. And guys, I literally had my phone, right? I have my phone and I'm texting a response, right? And I'm like ready to, and I stopped myself and I said, I'm not going to do it. I erased the whole thing and I just got off the page. I just kept scrolling. Sometimes it's the best thing you can do. Why? Because I don't want to deal with the guilt of, oh, I showed them, oh, I told them off, or oh, I showed them, the real stance. So sometimes it's better to lose than to win. I'm going to say that again. Sometimes it's better for us to lose than it is for us to win. Meaning, you don't have to fry every fish. You don't have to win every battle. People don't have to know every stance. Sometimes it's best to keep that in and just to keep it moving, okay? Because it's not worth the consequence that you could face in the future if you posted or tweeted or said the wrong thing, right? Especially if you're a leader in society, it's like you've got to be super careful because you never know who is gaining strength from you, who's getting some type of encouragement or inspiration from you, and then they see some wild post and then they're just like, huh, like I thought this was, like, and so then they become confused and you lose following, you lose friends, you lose fans, you lose neighbors, you lose all kind of people, right? With that kind of stuff. So we've got to be careful. So with that said, I want to now talk a little bit about anger. Um, and I say anger because I think anger really has showed its face in these last several months, if you guys can agree. Anger has been right there. It has been all throughout our news feeds, right? I know I'm not alone. It's been on Twitter, it's been in the newspapers, it's been everywhere. And it's like our world has unfortunately just been just overtaken by emotions of anger. Is it right? Is it wrong? I'm not to say. But what I can say is we are all dealing with some type of anger. And so what we have to do is we have to figure out where we can kind of, I guess, comfortably deal with anger in an effective way. So I went digging. Yay. And I was able to find some things. So first things first, let's talk about anger. What is the definition of anger? Okay, so it says the definition of anger is a strong feeling of annoyance, displeasure, or hostility. So anger is a strong feeling of annoyance, displeasure, or hostility. So I did visit some websites. The first website I did visit was it's gonna be helpguide.org. Helpguide.org. And so it's a really neat website. And so I kind of want to talk to you guys about what I was able to find because I think it'll help us. First things first, we have to realize the impact of anger on our health. Okay, so there is an impact of anger on our mental health, our physical health, and our emotional health. Anger could really stem into some pretty unhealthy situations. So, first thing, so your physical health, it can impact you to where it could cause heart disease. Is it really worth it? Right? Not only is heart disease on the monitor, it could also lead to diabetes. And I didn't know that. So being very angry could lead to diabetes. It could lead to a weakened immune system, stress, depression, and mental health. So this is pretty serious because we need to kind of figure out how to effectively deal with this so that we don't have these traumatic experiences later because of how we're responding to certain things on our news feed or certain interactions throughout the day. Like we've got to get a handle on this. I can tell you, I've come a long way as someone now as an adult doing a lot of adulting. I know growing up, we had a very humble background, and it was kind of encouraged to hone in on that feeling of anger and almost to be cool with it, right? And so this was growing up. This is so many years removed from now. But as a child, when I was like, I mean, not even a teenager, I remember fights in the neighborhood. I remember, it was almost like a stance of popularity, a stance of acceptance. It was almost like you were proving yourself. You know what I mean? And so I was exposed to some of that, willingly, unwillingly, forced, whatever. It was just kind of a part of the package of where I grew up. And I had to accept that. And I was able to maintain for the most part, but it was getting kind of tough. You couldn't be too happy. You don't want to walk around being all Miss Smiley, like, like, 'cause you were judged for stuff like that. So long story short, anger was just always just around, and it not necessarily from me, but it was just always around. Whether in the home or friends or whatever, we had anger, and I think that you guys can relate too. You've seen anger. It doesn't make people you know bad because they might have anger from time to time. No, I mean, even in the Bible, Jesus was angry once and flipped over tables because they were making business in the house of God. Okay, so I mean, there's a time and a place to be angry. There's a scripture also that says, be angry and sin not, neither let the sun go down on your wrath, right? So it's kind of like you kind of have to just learn how to balance the anger in a way that's healthy so that you're not keeping it all in, like passive aggressive type of anger where you're keeping everything in, and everything is just kind of bottled up until you just have your moment of explosion. And then you also don't want to deal with displaced anger where you're angry about what happened, what you read in the news, or you're angry about what happened on your job, so that you come home and you take it out on your brother, or you know what I mean, like that's displaced anger. You don't want to deal with displaced anger too. So I went to helpguide.com. And so I was able to find out some tips that they gave us for dealing with anger. So I'm going to show you guys these tips. So it says tips for dealing with anger. For one, be willing to forgive. Now, this is so hard to do. I think that if we had to categorize sin, um, this is the hidden sin. that people don't even think twice about is unforgiveness. Why? Because people feel justified. You know what I mean? Like, so and so hurt me, so I'm going to be angry about it. And I have every right to be angry about it. And are they right? Well, maybe they are right because of what somebody did to them. But how do you deal with this anger and unforgiveness? Now, I'm going to stay on this one right here because unforgiveness is so real. And it's like, we just kind of put it to the side, right? Because we look for the big sins, the big things that, you know, people can see. But I honestly think a lot of people are dealing with unforgiveness, if not everybody is dealing with unforgiveness. I had a really interesting situation happened to me when my mom was passing away. She passed of cancer. And I remember, you know, like when people are passing away, I don't know about you guys, but I find it a time of reflection and cleansing of myself, of anything in me that is not right. And I remember, you know, I was standing on her deathbed, and I just remember asking my mom, you know, is there anything that you would recommend for me to do, or anything that I need to kind of get right in my heart? Because see, all of this stuff is a heart issue, y'all. And so I remember my mom, she just kept saying, you know, you have not forgiven everyone that has hurt you. You have not forgiven everyone that has hurt you. And it struck me to the core of my being. I mean, I could not do nothing but just sit there and sob. And I was in denial at first because I'm like, I've forgiven everyone. We all say that, right? Who have I not forgiven? I've forgiven every single person that's hurt me. There's no malice, there's no bitterness, there's no unforgiveness. We're cool. I told them you know, they're good. They apologize. I'm good. But deep down inside, there are still seeds of unforgiveness. And sometimes you have to kind of be real enough to say, ouch, I do have a problem with what so and so said on Facebook, or with how so and so treated me last time I saw them. And I need to be real about it enough to get that out of my system, because if you're not, what happens is it continues to grow until it grows into a root of bitterness. And then you're really dealing with a lot, because now you're dealing with years of unforgiveness. And I've been there. One thing about unforgiveness is when my mom told me, you know, that I was dealing with unforgiveness, I was like, goodness, who have I not forgiven? And I literally had to sit there, y'all. I had to sit and think. And I think some of us have to sit. Some of you don't have to sit and think, you know, immediately, boom, that person, right? But we have to sometimes sit and think and reflect and say, who have I not forgiven? And what can I do different? How can I forgive this person? Listen, forgiveness is a process. I wrote about it in my book, Overcoming Obstacles, Volume 1 and Volume 4. I wrote about unforgiveness. Now, unforgiveness is tough because it's like sometimes you still have to deal with those same people every day. They are not going anywhere. You might live with those people, whatever, and you've got this cloak of unforgiveness. And you're trying to figure out, how do I forgive these people so that I'm not a monster, or so that I'm not like being eaten up inside. A lot of us, we play our roles really well, you know, whether it's you know, where you fellowship, or where you work, or your family members, like you play your role pretty well. You have this facade. But, you know, sometimes you got to really dig deep down in your heart and deal with those issues. And listen, it's not going to be this patty cake conversation. Like it's going to take reflection. It's going to take confession, you know, where you actually write out, okay, I've got a problem. I've got a problem with this person or with what happened. And it's going to take a process. Sometimes, you know, it's going to take you revisiting that situation 4 times, 10 times, 20 times, until you can get all of that out. Now, I know somebody, a couple of months ago, I was able to see a post where somebody posted something, and like this, like preacher was saying stuff about like dealing with unforgiveness, and he like said a prayer of blessing for that person that hurt him, that he had not forgiven. And then there was this really interesting part that was in it, and it said, do not lay, you know, what they did against me against their charge. Like, when they die from this world or whatever, I don't want you bringing that up. Like, I don't want you accusing them, God, of what they did. Like, it was like a prayer he was saying. And he's like, I don't want you accusing them at all. Like, I want them to be free, liberated. Like, I don't want my name to come up and what they did. Now, listen, I'm going to tell you, that's hard to do. There's some people you're like, get them, God, or you're like, get them. Like, you want vengeance. But then you've got to revisit that verse that says, in scripture, it says, vengeance is mine, says the Lord, I will repay. Okay. And sometimes you get upset because you're like, okay, God, you said you're going to repay. You haven't done nothing, right? So we want to take actions into our own hands. But we've got to learn to wait, and we've got to learn to work on ourselves and to really let the matter go. And let's look at these tips. It says being willing to forgive. And then, of course, look at step number 4, know when to let go. I got this from the website that I mentioned, helpguide.org, which is streaming beneath the tips. But it says, be willing to forgive and then talk to someone you trust. This is so important. And not even someone you trust. I had to go and talk to some people about what I was dealing with once, especially when I was when I was growing up as a youth. I was required to do counseling sessions and things like that, which I definitely highly recommend, to visit a counseling session. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Make sure that you're okay upstairs. Make sure that, you're thinking right and things like that. And so I went through a tough time because I was a homeless youth, and my brother had passed. And so I was dealing with just the anger of not having my brother. And so I kind of needed to talk with someone. I had a phenomenal counselor who I love. And I still chat with even till today because he's great. And I would have to talk to him about anger and how to forgive, just because my brother wasn't here anymore. And some of you might be dealing with that. Like, you might have lost a loved one and you just kind of can't cope. You don't get it. You don't know why, right? And so it's important that you learn to talk to someone that you love, someone that you trust, someone that and if you have to pay for a counseling session, if you have a best friend, or you have, someone in your circle of influence that you trust, a mentor, someone that I love my mentors because they were there for me. I was able to talk about a lot of things. And sometimes they were able to kind of help me reflect and say, India, this is not necessarily the right stance on the situation. Or they would say, I can't believe you've been through that. I can't imagine going through that. I'm sorry that you had to go through that, but just know that I'm here to walk you through that. Does that make sense? So it does not hurt at all to kind of get help and talk to someone. You're not alone. If you're dealing with anger, you are not alone. Okay, another thing, get enough sleep. Some of us, all we really need is a 2-hour nap, or really 8 hours of sleep. Because we're depriving ourselves of sleep, because we're looking at everything that's been tweeted, or we're looking at every news article that's come out, and we're raising our blood pressure, and we're just overly anxious, and we're waiting on people's responses as to what we posted on Facebook. We've got this really controversial post going, and we need to see every single response, and we've got to reply to every single response right here, right now. And it's causing way too much stress and anxiety and anger, and it's building up. And sometimes all you really need to do is go to sleep. I know for me, I can't wait to just one day be able to take a vacation and go to sleep. So anyway, so get some sleep, y'all. If you're dealing with anger, get some sleep. Also, like we've talked about, number 4, know when to let something go. This is really tough because sometimes, like some people be like, you're still talking about that, and that was 8 years ago. And they've got a point, but it just feels good to be angry. And you gotta let it go. Like you gotta just say, okay, I'm not gonna fry this fish anymore. I'm just gonna let it go. Take a deep breath, let it go. Bite your tongue. Don't say anything else. Just let it go. So I want to give you guys that encouragement. If you're dealing with a grudge 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 8 years ago, 12 years ago, God forbid, 20 years ago, you got to let it go. It's time. Let it go. Because it's going to be so much better for your health, your heart, and everything else. Your stress levels are going to go down because you've been able to deal with that and to let things go. Now, listen, just because you've let it go and you might have even forgiven someone does not mean that you have to become best friends with that person all over again and to open yourself back up and open your life back up. No. But at the same time, it does not also mean that you treat them like they're not even breathing air when they walk next to you, right? So there's a healthy balance. Um, I've learned that if there's someone that I don't really favor that walks in the room and they might have hurt me, I've kind of had to learn some emotional intelligence to where I can still remain professional um, without kind of giving into the feelings of anger that I might feel at the moment. And I think that in our communities, especially with what's been going on in our society, it's imperative that we kind of learn um, how to better cope with what's been going on without being reactive. Because I think that all of us are really trying to find solutions, and we're really trying to come together as one and as a unit, as a strong team. And so the best thing we can do is to do our part with peace and with just supporting each other the best way we can, forgiving one another the best way we can. Because I mean, it's easy to, especially in your own life when you're dealing with personal issues and things like that. It is easy to have anger, and it is easy to hold on to that anger, especially when you feel like you have not received an apology. That is I tell you, that is one thing there. When you have not received an apology that you know you should get, and they just won't apologize to you, that can get under somebody's skin, right? But how do you deal with that person that won't apologize and they did you wrong? Or you're dealing with the situation and you have not received an apology and you're trying to figure out how to get over these feelings of anger when all you want is an I'm sorry, and you'll just drop it all. But they will not. Or even better, they'll say, I did nothing wrong to you. I'm not apologizing for nothing. And they go about their merry way, and you're like, OMG. Did they just sincerely say they did nothing to me? And I have all these feelings of anger. I was expecting an I'm sorry. And instead I did nothing to you, and they walk away. So, how do you deal with that? Well, let me tell you this. Someone told me once that whenever you are angry towards someone, they have control, they have power over you because you're holding on to that negative energy and they are feeling that negative energy. And so, the best way to really get back at somebody that you're angry at is to really let them go. Release that power, get your power back. Okay, by choosing to forgive, choosing to pray blessings on them. Now, that's hard to do. Choose to pray blessings on them until those feelings of resentment and anger go away. Because if not, you're only going to stay stuck. Remember, I'm telling you this from personal experience. I had an experience once. I'll share with you guys. Um, it was like a dream or something, something supernatural, and it was like I was in heaven with God, and somebody had wronged me. And I saw this person, and they were begging God for forgiveness. They they could not repay with what they did to me. They were wrong. And God showed me, and I was standing there and I was kind of leaning against God, like, right? And I was completely justified, completely justified. And it was like God just spoke to me, and he was like, you got to let them go. You got to forgive them. There's no way they can ever repay for what they did to you. You see, this person is struggling. They're struggling with me because they can't, they didn't, they are totally guilty with what they did. And you are completely right with how you feel, but you got to let it go and you got to choose to forgive them. so that you, one, can move on, and two, they could be released. And it was really tough. But I woke up and I was like, okay, I'll forgive them, I guess, right? Tough to do, y'all. Now, I'm talking to you guys about this because I think all of us are trying to live healthy, and we all want to just kind of live peaceably with one another. And I think one thing that we all are striving to do is to figure out how to love one another even more and better, right? Especially just under the different things that we've all have just had to encounter recently. And so it's like, how do we choose to love one another, right? Instead of being angry and holding on to guilt or anger and rage and unforgiveness. And so I wanted to talk about unforgiveness because I tell you, it's tough. It's tough, but it's a process to really forgive someone. I mean, really forgive, not this shallow, fake, oh yeah, you're good. You're good. I have nothing against you. You're good. We good. We're good. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about real forgiveness. You can look that person in the eye. Even if they don't say they're sorry, you can support them, you can bless them, you can be in their presence and not have any malice or any anger or any bitterness build up because you've been working on it. And that's a process. That is a real process. And if you're dealing with that, please don't feel bad, don't feel undermined or anything, because you're human and you're just trying to figure it out. Just know that it will get better. Now, this is the life coach in me talking to you guys now, so but so that's one thing that you can do when you're dealing with guilt, and then or with anger. And then it says to humor. I love to laugh. I don't laugh enough, I admit, but I need to laugh some more. So if y'all are comedians, come on over because I need some laughter. But dealing with humor. Humor is wonderful. I love looking at healthy, wonderful comedy or hanging out with funny people. My brother is so funny. My brother Rodney is hilarious. I love getting around Rodney and just letting him make me laugh because he's just funny. I love to laugh. I love talking to people that make me laugh. And so, I'm so grateful for those that just know how to make others, make us laugh, make others laugh. And so if you're that type of person, you're like the goofball, you're the class clown or whatever, keep it up because we need you. So yeah, get around someone that helps you laugh. And also your children. I love my babies and my kids. There's something about it. There's just a joy and there's just a humor that comes when we hang out with each other and we play around the house or we play monster or whatever, like whatever we're doing. It's beautiful. Like your children, if you have kids, take advantage of that. There's a joy that comes with those little ones. You just gotta find it, and hone in on that because that'll help you through tough times as well. And then it says that there are anger management classes. And I have a friend that does have anger management classes that he offers. His name is Jonathan, and hopefully I can get his information to you guys, because he does offer anger management classes as well. And he's been doing that for a while. And of course, there are other resources. There's NAMI.com. And then also I went to a page called mindtools.com. Which I'll show you guys, mindtools.com. So it's streaming underneath there. That's another resource that you can go to if you find that, you need help dealing with things. So, with that, it's just kind of, I just wanted to talk to you guys about anger and guilt. And one thing too, why are we doing all this? Because we're trying to preserve our relationships. What happens when we have anger and it's not healthy and it's not dealt with properly is that it makes it hard for people to trust you. It makes it hard for people to speak honestly with you. It could damage your children. And so the best thing you can really do is bite your tongue. And there are some myths that I do want to challenge that I found on this website. And it says some myths were, one, it was like, I can't help myself. I just get angry and I just can't control it. Like it just happens. It overtakes me. I don't know what to do. And that's a myth. Okay. And then there's another myth that says it's just something I can't control. Like, and the thing is, what you have to do is you have to realize you do not have to always react, right? You can respond in a healthy, professional manner. And you can respond with the other person in mind, trying to be empathetic to figure out what can I do so that I'm not damaging that person, right? Um, and so, and there's a verse that says, a soft answer turneth away wrath. Now, I remember when I was teaching high school, and I was teaching like algebra 2, seniors. And I would have seniors come in my class, y'all. I'm not lying. Some seniors would curse me slap out. I mean, call me names, all kind of names in the book. I had seniors that would come in my class angry, loud pitched, loud voice. Sometimes, they would slam desks. They would try to throw books or, like just But when you've been teaching forever, you get used to that stuff, and it's like, yeah, you'll love me at the end of the year, because that's how the kids are. They start out, they don't like you at first, they test the waters, they test your boundaries, and then they wind up loving you, and you're like their favorite teacher, even though you taught algebra. So I remember I had some, seniors come in, and I had to learn how to respond and not react, especially when, they were trying to either damage property or they were, calling me names that were very insulting and very degrading. I had to learn, like, okay, I'm not going to give into that. How can I teach them? And I would always think, how could my example impact them in the future? Will they remember me when they're adults and they deal with a difficult person or a personality that might not be very favorable towards them? Will they remember me? Will they remember how I was calm and how I did not react, and how I did not get vengeance and say something snooty or snide, just give them a snide comment or a snide remark back. And I would try to think, and then I would also think, like, especially from like my African American students and Black students and minority students, like, how can I be an example to them? You know, um, I don't know who their role models were. I don't know who their mentors were, but maybe I could be a mentor. And it was funny because, of course, I would have students, oh, Miss White, can you be my mentor? Ah, like, so I'd have like 5 to 10 kids I'm mentoring. Like, your examples rub off. We never know who's watching. And so it's imperative that we choose to respond and not react, especially when you have different things pulling at you and it's very easy, or you feel like you have a very justified stance. It's still imperative that we choose to respond and not react, and that we act in love. And so, so we want to kind of go against those myths of we can't control it or can't help myself. And and then also we need to look at what is really causing the anger. What is really causing the anger? There are some, causes of anger, general. One is embarrassment. Somebody embarrasses you. It's like, oh goodness, right? Insecurity can cause anger. You also have hurt can cause anger. Shame. Somebody shames you, that can cause anger. And vulnerability. And it talks about how men on this website, it talks about how men can hide through anger also, because if they're feeling a sense of anxiety, whether it's about paying bills or being a responsible guy and, making things happen, like, men can hide through anger because they're feeling anxious or they're feeling stressed or scared or nervous. And so in order to kind of facade so that people don't, see their true colors and see how vulnerable they are, they'll put up this really hard shell and always angry, right. So not all men, some men. And so with that said, it's like it's just basically a symptom. It's a symptom, and it can cause depressions and traumas and things like that. And so we've got to learn how to effectively deal with anger. And so I've got the tips up here for you guys. We've got to be willing to forgive. We need more forgiveness. And we also need to know what else can cause anger, because it's like, I think so much is happening and we don't know. We have to learn how to kind of target what's going on in our own lives, right? from day to day, or specific situations, so that we know how to deal with it. So for example, other causes that I got from this website talks about overgeneralizing things, can cause anger. Also, paying attention to your should, I should do this, or you should have done this, or you must do this, that can cause anger. You also have people that are jumping to conclusions. Very easy way to get angry, right? Somebody, your spouse stayed out too late, and all of a sudden, here we go, and they could have innocently just been working, and then all of a sudden you got this unfortunate situation that could have been avoided if conclusions weren't jumped to. There's also the mind readers. Oh, I know why you said that. I know why you did that. I know what, like, save yourself, some anger, and just let it go. Just let it go. There's also collecting straws. So always looking at, oh, you did that to me. You did that. You did that. And it talks about how, like, there's a verse that I go to. It says, love does not keep score. And that's exactly what that is. So somebody offends you on Monday, got it, check. They offended me Tuesday, twice they offended me Tuesday, check, check. They offended me Thursday, got that. So collecting straws, love does not keep score. And it's that really, that's tough, y'all. That's really building that intensity. And then, when the walls are built up and then the explosion happens, that person's wondering, whoa, what happened? And it's just like the straw that broke the camel's back, So in order to just kind of avoid that, we have to learn to let things go. Can't fry every fish. Okay. Also, the blaming game, playing the blaming game. Oh, it's their fault. It's their fault. And at the end of the day, somebody said this. Anger is just basically saying you feel like somebody owes you something. They owe you something. They did something. They took something from you. They humiliated you. They owe you something. And so in order to feel like that person does not owe you, you have to just learn to release them and let them go so that you can move forward in your life as well. Because you don't want to stay stuck on a certain situation or whatever, when you have so much other things that you need to do and so much more living that needs to take place in your life, especially as a wonderful leader that you are. The last thing you want to do is to be, to remain stuck in a situation because of what you're experiencing with anger. There's also some cool down tips that we have that I'm super excited about. So you're dealing with anger. There's some cool down tips that you can kind of do, and you've got where you can focus on the physical intensity of the anger, and you'll know, oh my goodness, my shoulders are tensing up, or I'm seeing red, or like, I don't know what happens when you are dealing with anger. These are just some things that they said. You want to make sure that you take deep breaths. You want to make sure that you walk around the block, or that you can go get a massage, that you can go work out, relieve that anger in a positive way, and use your six senses to just kind of make things better. Another thing you can do is just do some positive, say some positive affirmations, like, okay, this moment is not the best of me. It's not going to get the best of me. This was just one thing that, just got me upset, but I'm bigger than this. Another thing is they said that you can start doing some reality check and some talks, or you can say, is this worth taking action on? Again, is this worth taking action on? Or you can say, is this worth getting angry over? Like, really? Is this really worth getting angry over? Or you could say, is this worth ruining the rest of my day? How we've all had that one situation that happened at 2 p.m. It is now 8 p.m. and your day is done. Like, you did not handle it effectively because somebody made you upset and your day was done at 2 p.m. So in order to avoid that, you just got to ask yourself some reality questions. Is it really worth getting angry over? Do I have to fry every fish? Another thing, what am I trying to prove by reacting like this? Like, what am I getting out of this? If it's not really beneficial, is it really worth me shouting across the rooftop how I feel? Or is it worth me um, demonstrating how I feel if it's not going to be beneficial for everyone? So these are some ways that we can deal with anger from day to day with what we're dealing with, and just kind of find out like how we can contribute better in society. Another thing you can do to deal with anger is just check your heart. These are all heart issues, not just anger, but also guilt. And I want to kind of just end on this, but these are things that we have to think about. These are heart issues. So we have to start looking at our heart and examining ourselves. We have to see what is really going on in our hearts. And there's a scripture I like, and it says, create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. Because a lot of these things are just heart issues. It's just heart stuff. And one thing I love about the human race is we're all different. But with that comes different mindsets, different personalities, different ways that we see things, right? Different ways that we handle situations, different ways that we cope, and different ways we express ourselves. And so with that said, we have to just make a little bit of flexibility in our hearts for others. We have to learn to not condemn ourselves, not to condemn others, be more forgiving, more thoughtful, and to just know, like, what are we really striving for? We're really striving for peace. We're really striving to have a good heart, um, so that we can do right by people. And we can feel good when we go to bed at night, that we're not crossing anybody wrong, and that we are not intentionally sabotaging anyone just because, like, but that we really want to just reflect peace and reflect love and unity, and that we could be a joy to everybody that we run across. Because I don't think there's anyone that, kind of wakes up and says, I want to be hated, or I want to, do something to hurt somebody. I don't think, the average person is, thinking that way. So with that said, these are some tips that we all have for dealing with anger and guilt. If you're dealing with guilt, you've got to make sure that you are dealing with a healthy form of guilt. And again, I put the website, you've got mindpathcare.com. So, that's a good website that has some good things for you guys that you can kind of go and check out. And then if you're dealing with guilt, the steps that you have are going to be to forgive yourself, think of the present, say you're sorry, be realistic about what you can control, and challenge perfectionism. Remember, we're not perfect. We're all just striving to be the best that we can be as people. So those are some things that you want to take away from this conversation today when dealing with guilt. Okay, now I want to talk about anger again. So we went to helpguide.org, and we were able to see anger problems, helpguide.org. And so when you're dealing with anger, there are some steps that they gave us, and it says here, be willing to forgive. Talk to someone that you trust. Get enough sleep. Know when to let something go. Turn to humor. Take some anger management classes. Okay. And with that, I think that will point all of us kind of just in the right direction as we continue to work on ourselves and we continue to love one another. And, that's to finalize everything. That's it. We just have to continue to love one another. And so I'm so glad that you guys were able to join me today on the Real Talk Show with Dr. India White. Thanks for letting me talk with you just to share my heart about anger and guilt and how we can effectively deal with it day by day. And I hope that, as you guys continue to have interactions with people that you are in your family, people that you fellowship with, people that you work with, people that you shop with, whatever, that you have better results with all of these, and that you'll be able to see your personal growth. I know for me, I'm constantly working on, just being better at loving people with not holding on to things, and, just reflecting better as a human being overall. And another thing too is, I think we as leaders, as parents, as teachers or whatever, we're all striving to kind of be someone that people can kind of see as an example in society. And so I want to encourage you guys to just always be your better self, no matter what. And don't give in to every temptation. Learn to walk away, learn to, forgive, learn to turn the cheek, learn to bite your tongue, and just continue to love, because that's the greatest thing we can do, is to continue to love one another. So with that said, I hope to hear back from you guys sometime soon. Please take a moment, visit my website, www.india-white.com. I'm so happy that you guys were able to join me on the Real Talk show today. And I'm looking forward to seeing how you guys are going to deal with different hard things that you have, facing in your future. And also, if you are looking for some content that you can read, I gave you guys some powerful websites. There's mindpathcare.com. You also have NAMI.org, NAMI.org. Wonderful website. And then there's also the health or helpguide.org website as well, that you can check out. They've got wonderful articles on there, and I'm sure there are wonderful resources as well. I also have a book, How to Overcome Obstacles from Your Past. In volume 1, I speak on anger and guilt, and also in volume 4, I speak on unforgiveness. So if you're interested in getting those, they are $20 each. Just give me a simple chat in the inbox, and I can send you the information. You can also find it on my website, www.india-white.com, if you would like those articles. And then if you just want a fun read, you can also read my autobiography, which is Double for My Trouble. If you want that information, then just send me a link, a DM message or whatnot, and I can get that to you as well. If you are looking for a spot on my show, please send me an email at india.white.123@gmail.com, and we will get you slotted on the show. And if you are looking for a motivational speaker, or if you need a coach, or if you're interested in doing a book collaboration, then give me a ring at my cell phone number, which if you have it, great. If not, just send me an email and I can give you my information. My email is india.white.123@gmail.com. Again, India, INDIA, .white.123@gmail.com. Again, thank you so much for joining me on the Real Talk Show with Dr. India White, where we keep it real as we serve others. So with that said, thanks so much, guys. I had a phenomenal time with you guys. I'm looking forward to next week, and I hope that you guys have a phenomenal night, a wonderful weekend, and that you just walk into just an abundance of success and blessings. So have a phenomenal night, guys. I will talk with you next time. Bye.